You're tuned in to WODU, the best in college radio. I'm Alex, and this is Cup Check, best sports radio show in the world. A lot to talk about today. College basketball starts Friday. ODU plays Saturday. Pretty excited for that. We'll get some thoughts on college basketball and some teams in college basketball. There's some thoughts going around college basketball right now that some teams may be able to be NBA teams. Speaking of the NBA, of course, season's getting going. Teams are starting to hit their groove while others are starting to fall apart a little bit. It's early, but we'll talk about everything that's going on in the NBA, who the best team is. Should a certain team tank? Is the Big Three in trouble? The return of D. Rose, all that and more. College football, ODU's miraculous homecoming. Probably one of the best football games I've seen live. Auburn with a big loss. Famous Jameis had some words after his game. Bama, Oregon, TCU, Arizona State, Ohio State, all that, and a lot more college football. A lot of big games went on last weekend, so we got to recap those. And then finish off with NFL. The AFC North, are they for real? Get my thoughts on that. Big quarterback out for the rest of the season for a championship caliber team. And then, of course, the Sanchez. Is it for real? Is it just a fluke? All that and more up on Cup Check. So starting off with college basketball, I mentioned how that starts Friday for a lot of teams. I believe the number one overall team is playing Friday in Kentucky. We'll see all the other ones that are playing on Friday. You got Kentucky playing, Arizona number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Most of the top 10, if not, I believe actually all of the top 10 are playing. In fact, it looks like almost all of the top 25 are playing Friday. Number 21 isn't. Other than that, it looks like for the most part, most of the top 25 teams are playing, and it doesn't look like any of them should lose. I mean, Grand Canyon is who Kentucky's playing. Arizona's playing Mount St. Mary's. Duke's playing Presbyterian. Wisconsin's playing NKU. I mean, none of these teams are going to put up a fight against anybody, any of these teams. I mean, UVA plays James Madison. Texas is playing North Dakota State, who was an upset pick and won a game in the tournament last year, but to beat Texas, ranked number 10, I don't see it happening. Wichita State, New Mexico State. New Mexico State won a couple games in the tournament. They lost their big man, though. Gonzaga plays Sacramento State. I mean, none of these games are. Michigan State plays Navy. Connecticut's playing Bryant. Ohio State plays UMass. I mean, Harvard plays MIT. Utah plays Ball State. I mean, any of the teams playing right now aren't playing anybody that's any threat to them. They'll all win first week of the game. You know, it's not a threat. And then I mentioned ODU plays at home their first game, 7 o'clock on Saturday. They play UNC Wilmington. That'll be a big game. UVA got all of their starters back. They lost one guy to, they lost two guys. One graduated in Larson. And another one, I think it was Batten, went over to Boston College. So they lost a couple, but for the most part, they have their entire team back. So that's something as a Old Dominion fan you like to see in your college basketball team, especially if you want them to do well. They did very well in the tournament they played in last year. I can't remember which tournament it was, but it was a pretty good season for them being so young. Last year they finished 18-18, 9-7 in the conference, only 4 games back And they didn't play awful. They really got that they really started clicking at the end of the season. And yeah, it was bad, and that's now at Boston College, senior at Boston College. This year, though, we'll see how Old Dominion does. They play VCU at home the 29th. That'll be a big game. Problem is, a lot of people will be at home for Thanksgiving break. It's the only problem with that game. It's at 7 p.m. So if you're here, go ahead and check that one out. But other than that, they don't play any ranked teams, so they shouldn't be in too much trouble. GMU's always a threat for them. VCU, obviously, we are not big fans of them down here. Richmond, Rice, William and Mary, they're playing the usual suspects. But with the team they have all coming back, only getting better, Bacote's still here, Ross, probably the best athlete on campus. I mean, Richard Ross is just pure athleticism, one of the best, if not the best on campus in any sport. He makes a remarkable play every single game. Whether it's a putback dunk, whether it's a block into the stands, doesn't matter. He always makes a remarkable play here or there. So having him back, he's a senior. Quite a few seniors this year, though. That's going to be a problem for Old Dominion. Their guard Bacote is only a junior, though. So they're still got some young guys going to be around for a little more. Palmore, I think Ross is really the big loss at the end of the season as a senior. But it should be a pretty good season. I'm going to say they may slip into the tournament. They may be able to win this. I mean, not looking Southern Miss, Louisiana Tech, Middle Tennessee, Tulsa. Not quite sure how their recruiting classes went. And they actually don't play anybody ranked as of right now. I mean, all these teams can slip in there, here and there. But we'll have to wait and see. I mean, Louisiana Tech's going to play Syracuse. That's most likely going to be a loss at Syracuse. I don't see them doing it. Just some of the teams in CUSA. But Old Dominion needs to go out there and get a W versus UNC Wilmington. Saturday at 7 in Ted. Go watch it. Student tickets are free, so go ahead and watch that. Hopefully I'll be able to cover all of the college basketball for the Mason Crown. Be able to check those out. Get a recap on them if you have to miss the game. But until then, we'll have to wait a little longer. Just a little longer. Right around the corner. We talked about it last Tuesday, how it was just around the corner. Now it's next show. I'll be giving predictions and stuff, I guess, on how I think the season's gonna go and everything there. One last thing to mention on that. Kentucky played a game versus a no-name school in a little exhibition game. And Kentucky, and the coach for Pikeville was 16. It was 116 to 68. A blowout. Everybody expected that. The thing that surprised people is that Pikeville's coach, Chris Briggs, said after the game that they can beat some NBA teams, and they would be a playoff team. He said that the Wildcats would be a playoff team in the NBA. He said they could go undefeated, too. He said they can go undefeated, and they'd be a playoff team in the NBA. Is that a little much? Yeah, probably. But, hey, if you really think that, and they're really that good, we'll see in time. But Calipari obviously wanted nothing to do with it. Calipari said, NBA team, I don't think so. We're just a young squad. We have a lot to prove. Let's be clear, we get buried by any team that's in the NBA. I'm not quite sure about that there, Calipari. You know you got a good squad. And, well, we know that the 76ers don't. We know that a lot of teams out there. The Bucks. You could probably beat the Bucks. Probably could beat the Bucks. Be straight up honest with you. the Bucks are a pretty bad basketball team. Yeah. I mean, looking at it'd be an interesting one versus the Lakers. Kobe would be your problem. Other than that, Orlando. You could probably beat Orlando. Utah. Even the Nuggets would be close, I think. I haven't seen them play a full game. But the way people are talking about them and the way they won that game, if they're on their good day, they can beat probably a decent amount of these teams in the NBA. Not a decent amount. They can beat some. I think the Bucks, Nuggets are going to be their hardest competition out of the ones they probably could beat. The Magic, the Jazz. I think it'd be 5 teams. 5 teams in the NBA. I think that the Wildcats could win. That's it's interesting to say that they could go undefeated, which they won't. I mean, you look at college basketball teams now, and yeah, going undefeated would be a remarkable feat by no stretch of the imagination. If you go undefeated, you are the best team in basketball, that makes sense, duh. But I mean, looking at their schedule, if they can go undefeated, I would not be surprised if they could beat those 5 teams. Maybe more. Because they got to beat Kansas in a neutral location. They got to beat Texas at home. They got to beat UNC at home. They got to beat Louisville on the road. And those are just teams in the top 25. And then they got to beat Florida on the road and then beat Florida at home. UCLA's always got a decent squad on the basketball court. They got to play UCLA. The rest of them, for the most part, they should beat. I mean, the SEC is not known for basketball. They just aren't. But they got to play quite a few top 25 teams, and this is saying that none of these other surprise teams get up there. And I think that UCLA is going to be a decent team this year, just because UCLA is always a pretty good basketball team when the season rolls around. Maybe not recently, but in previous history, they've been one of the better basketball teams in college basketball. But until Friday, I guess until next Tuesday, we'll be on Thursday, but until next Tuesday, can't really talk about a whole lot college basketball besides that. I mean, Indiana, they're in trouble this year with anything and everything that could go wrong has gone wrong for them on the basketball court, whether it be 2 people failed a drug test, one of their players got hit by another player who was drunk driving. It just hasn't been a good off season for the Hoosiers of Indiana. But guess it is what it is. We'll see how they can do on the court after all of this. But until then, we'll move on to NBA. We'll move on to the big boys. We'll move on to the guys that make the money legally, at least. Starting off with Derrick Rose returning to the basketball court after spraining his ankle, which makes you wonder his long-term health. We've all wondered about how well he would be when he got back, if he could stay healthy. But it's not about this year. Yeah, this is probably their best year to win a championship. I don't think anybody's debating that. But he needs to stay healthy for a long time. I mean, yeah, if he can stay healthy for the majority of the year, that's good. Okay, that's solid. I mean, he's young, but he needs to be played like Dwayne Wade did last year. He misses 20 games because coach sits him so he can preserve his knees. The problem is, he's not that old. Derrick Rose isn't that old. He should be out there playing every game if he can play every game. Which you don't want to sit the best guy on your team by any stretch of the imagination. When you got a guy like this, There's no way you want to sit him, especially when he comes out and drops 24 points. 24 points in 32 minutes, 7 assists, 2 rebounds. You can't sit that. So you have that on the bench, and he has to sit, or you're trying to preserve him or whatnot. It's hard to do, especially seeing what he can do. I mean, he shot 45%, 40 from three-point line, 4 for 5 on free throws. A steal, not great, 3 turnovers, 7 assists, 24 points. And a smackdown of Detroit. 11. Take it how you want. Without him, they lost to Boston, but they beat Philadelphia close, Milwaukee not so close, 9 points, and Orlando by 8. They're an okay team without him. They're a very, very good team with him. They're a championship quality with him. Problem is, will they be there when it comes time to prove their championship worth? They play Toronto, who's 6-1, coming up Thursday at Toronto. And that's a game where we hope Derrick Rose will play just so we can see how good they are. Because the Pistons aren't that good. The Pistons are really not that good. And we all know that. Detroit Pistons are not a team you're afraid of. They're not a team that you see coming up on your schedule now. Maybe back in the late 2000s when they were winning championships with Rip Hamilton and all them, Chauncey Billups, all them. But now, yeah, they got some quality pieces on the court. I'm not going to argue that. I like some of their pieces they have. The center in Drummond, or power forward, whatever he plays at the time. He's a good center power forward mix. He's I think their best player on their team. Personally, I think he's the best player on their team. Defensive wise, he's good. They have some good pieces. Problem is, they can't put it together. But back to the Bulls. The Bulls beat them by a nice 11-point margin. That was with Derrick Rose. I need to see them play versus a better team with Derrick Rose and see how they do. Until I see that, I don't know how good they are and how reliable is Derrick Rose. My big thing is how reliable is Derrick Rose. Until we find that out, until we find out if he can be there when we need him, when the Bulls need him, I can't hop on the Bulls. Even though I picked them to win the championship. I said Bulls, Portland, Trailblazers. So I'm sticking with. Portland's 4-3. They haven't started off too bad. They haven't started off too good either. But looking at the teams in the West, they're better than Los Angeles, Portland, that is. And yeah, Los Angeles is 4-2. Well, they've really struggled versus teams they shouldn't have. San Antonio's 2-3. The Kings are 5-2, but they just lost to the Thunder. Memphis, Golden State, and Houston are good. They're good. There's not a whole lot you can say about them. They are a solid squad. But Portland's still my choice for the West. But Chicago's got to get healthy if they want to win the championship. And they got to stay healthy. And Derrick Rose is a big key component of that. Talking about teams from surprise teams and everything like that. Miami, 5-2. Talking with some people about Miami. How's Miami going to do? And one of them said, hey, Miami, they're going to finish better than the Bulls. I took them pretty seriously. I was like, okay, I understand. A lot of people, if I would have came on this show and Tyler's sitting here and I go, the Heat are going to finish better than Cleveland, he'd probably laugh me out of the booth. But right now, Miami's 5-2. And Chris Bosh gets to do what Chris Bosh wants to do. I mean, we all forgot Chris Bosh was an all-star with Toronto. An all-star. Now, or then last year and a couple of years, past 3-4 years, he was an average, not average, but he was above average 2.5 star. You know, it's like the big 2.5 because they were saying Chris Bosh wasn't a star. Well, now he's showing he's a star by leading Miami to 5-2, and it is him. I mean, he right now is that team. They did get better. They got a lot better. Look at the scores and everything they have here, but bench-wise and everything, they've gotten better. But Chris Bosh, he leads the team in both points and rebounds on the majority of the games. I mean, you look at the stats for the Heat. Chris Bosh rebounding. Chris Bosh points. Dwayne Wade assist. 7. I mean, Dwayne Wade 7 assists. You weren't seeing that earlier. And then Mario Chalmers with a steal and a half. Shane Williams with a block. But you look at their team, they added depth. I mean, Luol Deng, he's putting up a couple points. I mean, Luol Deng's putting up 15 points a game. Mario Chalmers 11. Shane Williams 10. Norris Cole 7. Udonis Haslam's still around. He's putting in points here and there. Shabazz Napier's not doing awful as a rookie. I mean, he could be doing better. He's only got 2 assists, 4 points. But this also is counting the fact that there are some players who haven't played on their team that are pretty good. I mean, you look at some players that are injured right now. Danny Granger hasn't played yet. Danny Granger's pretty good. Danny Granger's he may be past his prime, but he was solid for a while. Career he's averaging 17 points, 2 assists, 5 rebounds as a small forward. Last year he didn't do great. Last year he didn't start either though. Last year he played for the Clippers. 8 points, assists, 3 rebounds. You put him in there, he's day-to-day right now. He's unlikely to play. He hurt his hamstring. But you put him at small forward, kind of where they have Shane Williams playing right now. Where is Shane Williams? Exactly. But you put him in there. The Heat are only going to get better. Shane Williams will have time and experience under his belt at this point going into the season when Granger does get healthy. The Heat are nothing to mess with. They're not going to fall off like most people thought. They weren't going to tank and end up at the bottom of the league. Power ranking rise, the Heat are 5th. And then you look at Cleveland all the way down to 14. Now, this power ranking is not great. I mean, Washington's 12th at 5-2. I think Washington is probably one of the best teams in the East. Or my choice to win the East. Finish with a 1 seed of the East. I'm gonna stick with that. I mean, they're tied with Miami. But you look at some of these teams that are up there, and it's still they haven't played all. Like Los Angeles, the Clippers. That is, I'm not sold on them. The Lakers finally got their first win. Talking about Los Angeles teams, the Knicks look bad. I mean, the East still doesn't look that good. They have Toronto, Miami, Chicago, Washington, Cleveland, Charlotte, Brooklyn. 7 teams? There's 7. Atlanta, there's 8. There's your 8. I mean, the West, you got Golden State, Houston, Memphis, San Antonio, Los Angeles, Portland, Sacramento, who came out of nowhere. I said Sacramento's had the pieces for a while now. I didn't think they'd put it together this season, but I said they had the pieces. I like Boogie Cousins, one of the best, if not the best center in the league, along with quite a few other pieces around him. So if they can do well throughout the season, I mean, Rudy Gay, they have the possibility to make a little run in it. Darren Collison, DeMarcus Cousins is leading them in blocks, rebounds, and points. Darren Collison in assists and steals. You got Rudy Gay putting up 22 points. DeMarcus Cousins 23. Darren Collison 14. Carl Landry at 10. Ben McLemore, 8. Sophomore year. Doesn't look really like a sophomore slump. They're first in rebounds, too. And 7th in points, 4. I mean, rebounds are a big thing in the NBA. You really need rebounds, especially offensive. But they came out of nowhere. You got Phoenix, Dallas, New Orleans. I mean, even Utah is up there. OKC. You're looking at these teams, and they're not awful. OKC's going to struggle to get into the playoffs, which will bring me to another point here in a minute. But it makes you wonder, if the Cavs are in the West, they'd be in big trouble. The Cavs being in the East, are they in trouble? Are the Cavs in trouble in the East? I don't think they're in trouble in the East just because it's the East. Championship-wise, they are in trouble. Yeah, they're 2-3, and they've turned it around from their 1-3. They've won 1 or something. I don't know. They're 3-3 now. They've turned it around. They've won 2 straight. Okay. They needed 61 points last half, the second half of last night's game, to win versus the Pelicans. 61 from their big 3 to win versus the Pelicans, who are kind of laughed at in the West. You mentioned the Pelicans. Aha, Anthony Davis. That's it. Okay, so you lost to the Pelicans. They needed 61 in the second half to beat the Pelicans by 7. 61 points from the big 3. The rest of the team put up 6. Yeah, it's going to be hard to shut down LeBron James, Kevin Love, and Kyrie Irving. It's going to be very hard to do that. It's darn near impossible to do that. But if some team can find a way, pretty much to take LeBron out, if you can take LeBron out, that team suffers. Kevin Love is known as a stat sheet stuffer in the NBA. NBA GMs see him as a stat sheet stuffer. Tongue twister for you. They don't see him as a remarkable player as we do. I mean, I think he's probably a top 5 player. But according to NBA GMs, he'll fill your stat sheet, but he won't get you the wins. He'll put up a double-double, triple-double, but he won't get you the wins. So you take LeBron out, you're left with Kyrie Irving and a stat sheet stuffer. Kyrie Irving couldn't do it before the season. They couldn't make the playoffs. Cleveland's not in the clear. I'm not going to say they're in trouble, but they're in the thick of it right now. They need to step it up. I mean, Kyrie Irving's averaging 22 and 5 assists. You have a team like that, you need to be averaging more than 5 assists. I don't know what. Kyrie Irving, you're the point guard, okay? Your job's to get the ball to LeBron James and Kevin Love. So that's the problem I have with Russell Westbrook as well. He's a prime example to that. They need him, both of these guys, Irving and a healthy Westbrook, to pass the ball to the star player. Both of them have the best player in NBA, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and they have a point guard who likes to shoot, who's trigger happy. You got to get LeBron James going to get his shots. LeBron James will get his shots. Kevin Durant will not. Kevin Durant will take back seat, which people don't like about him, but he will. You got Kevin Love too. Kevin Love spreads the floor remarkably. I mean, right now Kevin Love's averaging a double-double. Almost 19 points, 10 rebounds. They're averaging 102 points total. Nobody out of the big 3 besides Varejao is averaging more than double-digit points. Tristan Thompson's right there, and Waiters as well. Waiters just got hurt, though, so he's day-to-day with the back problems. I mean, looking at their team, they're not doing great in the... They got Tristan Thompson, Sean Marion coming off the bench. Other than that, their next bench player, and even Sean Marion, and none of their bench players are averaging over 5. So that's not good. None of their bench players are averaging over an assist besides Sean Marion and Matthew Delavando. Delavandoe. Something crazy like that. Other than Sean Marion, none of their bench players are averaging over a rebound except Mike Miller. They don't have a bench. They really don't. You take out Tristan Thompson, you're not looking at a whole lot. So if you get any of the big three in foul trouble early, especially Kevin Love. I mean, Tristan Thompson's okay. He's good, but he's not great. That's some trouble. Deion Waiters has only started 3 games as well. Him and Sean Marion have started 3 apiece. Kind of switched it up a little bit. Tristan Thompson hasn't started any, but the Cavs aren't in trouble. I'm not saying the Cavs are in trouble. I'm not proclaiming that like a lot of people are. I'm saying they're in the thick of it and they got a lot to work on. They'll make the playoffs. They're in the East. They're going to make the playoffs. But they need to work on a lot if they want to become NBA championship ready, I guess is what they're aiming for. But you got the best team in NBA. I'm going with the Warriors. I mean, I don't think Houston's the best team. We saw Golden State beat that. Memphis is pretty good. Memphis is a so far been phenomenal, 6-1. But Golden State, the way they played is something to be mesmerized at. I mean, they're scoring 105 points, only allowing 94. They're passing the ball well, 4th in the league. They're almost at 23.5 assists. The rebounds, they lack a little bit. But you look at the teams they played and the teams they beat. Sacramento, who's top in the power rankings, are 5-2. Los Angeles, not very good. Portland, a solid squad. Very good team, actually. The Clippers, good. Houston, good. And then they lost to Phoenix, who... Phoenix isn't bad. Phoenix would have made the playoffs in the East. They missed in the West by a couple games. Plus, they didn't have Klay Thompson versus Phoenix. He was out with his shooting hand. And he sprained hand. Golden State's the best team in the NBA right now. There's no other team in the NBA that is better than Golden State. I would take Golden State over the field right now. That may change in time because, I have Portland. But Golden State needs to rebound better, and they got to keep this defense up. I don't know if they can keep the defense up. And then they got to stay healthy. Steph Curry, he always gets injured. Always, always, always. But if they can stay healthy and continue this tear, I don't see why they're not up there competing for the NBA championship. And lastly, in NBA, I talked about it a little bit. The Thunder. Mark Cuban said the Thunder should sit Durant and Westbrook and tank the season. It's an interesting tactic. Try to get your opponents to tank their season. Would Mark Cuban tank his season on purpose? You say, oh, yeah, he definitely would. Well, I don't see why he would. You really see Mark Cuban sitting Tyson Chandler, who he's paying $14 million to. Sitting Chandler Parsons, who he's paying almost $15 million to. Sitting Dirk, he's paying almost $8 million to. You think he's just going to sit those guys? You think he would sit there and go, yeah, they're injured, so I'm just not going to bring them back? No. You have number 1 or 2 best player in the league right now in Kevin Durant. You have one of the top 10 best players in the NBA in Russell Westbrook. You're going to sit them to tank. You're going to tank a season where Durant becomes a free agent. You're going to tank it and try and do well. Or try and do well in the draft. I don't know where what he's thinking in that mindset. Maybe he just doesn't want them to make it into the playoffs. To tank the season would be a unfathomable idea that the Thunder do. I mean, tanking a season, if you're the 76ers, okay, the 76ers don't have a whole lot. If you're Utah, you're not even trying to tank the season. You're just bad. OKC has two of the best players in the league. And Serge Ibaka is a solid player as well. To tank a season to try to get a good draft pick. Mark Cuban, he's got some out there things, but that's one of the most out there things I've heard. To say that that's the best idea for them, to tank a season to pick up somebody good when they have Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka, Steve Adams. And you sit them? You don't even play them? He's like, yeah, you sit. Kevin Durant always wants it. There's no way you're sitting a healthy Kevin Durant. Not because, because we don't want to sit him. Kevin Durant will not sit if he's healthy. There is no way in this world if Kevin Durant can shoot a basketball and play on a court, he is not playing. There's no way you are keeping that man off a basketball court. He's one of the few that I can say has the work ethic of a Jordan-type player. Maybe not like Jordan, but he is playing nonstop. He's not one of the players that complained about a long season because he wants to play. Kevin Durant wants to play basketball all the time. So if he's healthy, he's playing basketball. So right there goes that mindset of, we'll tank the season, because it's not going to happen when you have a healthy Kevin Durant. Russell Westbrook, you may be able to get him to sit, but Kevin Durant wants to win. Therefore, and you want to win. You want to keep Kevin Durant there if you're the OKC Thunder. So to sit there and say, no. You don't tank a season. Not at all. You can't do that. And the fans of OKC deserve better than to tank a season. Until Cuban sits his stars, I don't see OKC doing it. Even if Cuban sat his stars, they're not going to sit there and sit Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka, because he's going to win some games. It's just a ridiculous statement to say tank. Tanking's become too big in the NBA. You don't build off a free agency. You don't happen to get a good draft pick. You try and be the worst team in the NBA to get a good draft pick. I mean, I understand to a point, especially last year. Last year, players coming out of that draft are phenomenal. I understand tanking, I guess, that last year. But this year, for an NBA championship quality team to tank, I can't see them doing it. I can't see OKC doing it. And I don't think they should do it. It would be a stupid move on their part, and they'd probably lose Kevin Durant if they did that. But hey, I guess we'll find out. I'm not an owner of an NBA team like Mark Cuban is, so maybe. Moving on to college football. A lot went on here. You got CUSA, Old Dominion, of course, homecoming versus FIU. One of the best games I have ever watched live, ever. Old Dominion missed a field goal to start. It wasn't looking good. Heineke had a pretty phenomenal day. 315 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Lowry had 2 touchdowns, 142 yards. Lowry fumbled it at one point. Probably looked like the game was over. I mean, he fumbled it. The defense held him to a field goal. Old Dominion's defense held FIU to a field goal late in the third quarter. 3 minutes left in the third quarter. I mean, it got to the point. Old Dominion was down 35-28, and they tied it up with 1:05 left. And then, phenomenal. Alex Magoo, the quarterback for the Panthers, who's trying to do a little play. There were a minute left. They were running some clock out. He's about to get sacked. He avoids it. He throws a flip pass. It's tipped by Samuel, the running back. And Falante Misher comes out of nowhere, dives in, grabs the football, and phenomenal play by Fisher. I mean, a remarkable play. Diving in, catching it, scoring a touchdown. Not scoring a touchdown, sorry. Catching it down, but before the ball hit the ground. Diving interception, setting up the game-winning field goal for the guy who's never attempted a field goal in his career, Satchel Ziffer, the walk-on, I believe, sophomore. Walk-on sophomore hadn't attempted a field goal at his lifetime. Well, not lifetime, but college field goal. And he made it, winning homecoming for Old Dominion. And taking them off an awful losing streak. They lost 5 straight, Old Dominion that is, before winning this one at home. Then they're on a bye week this week. Coming back next week. But definitely a big win for them. They play Louisiana Tech next week at home, and then they finish off at Florida Atlantic. But a amazing game for Old Dominion and homecoming in general. I mean, everybody won out of this game. It was a remarkable homecoming football game for Old Dominion. FIU lost a close one, and they looked out of it. It was 21-7, 21-10, I think, actually, at halftime. And it looked like Old Dominion was, the way the defense was playing and everything, they were going to kind of take the game and run with it. But they did. They gave up 5 scores straight, and, well, they made it close. Ended up being very, very close. But Old Dominion pulled it out in the end, winning their homecoming in a remarkable fashion. Again, one of the best games I may have ever watched. Hey, the best game I've ever seen live, football at least, by far. And one of the best games I've watched, period, even counting TV, because it was just a remarkable game. Ups and downs and turnovers and clutch times and defensive stops on third downs. It was just something to behold, man. It was a game. One for the record books. It was one for the record books. Talking about big games. Auburn at home versus SEC foe Texas A&M, and crucial turnovers as well. Auburn lost by 3 to Texas A&M. Really, a big thing was turnovers. I mean, I believe that Auburn had 2 fumbles within the last 5 minutes. That killed them. I mean, they were going to score twice, and instead they fumbled it twice in the last 2 minutes. Last 5 minutes. And this really shakes up the playoffs. Auburn looked like they may get in, and now it looks like Auburn won't make it in. Alabama may not make it in. Alabama may make it in, but I don't think they should. I'll get on that in a second. But this really shakes up the playoffs. Really makes it interesting. But yeah, the loss for Auburn. Auburn's done now. Their season's over. Might as well be over. 2 losses, 7-2. There's no way they're coming back from that and making the playoffs. Even if they beat Alabama and win out, there's no way they're coming back from that. It's just the way college football works. Whole playoff system and everything. Still, no way they're coming back from that. Oh, famous Jameis. Actually, we'll talk about Bama for a second. Bama won OT versus LSU. I mean, close one. Overtime. Won by touchdown. LSU is playing spoiler this year. Tried to spoil Alabama, couldn't do it. They've spoiled a couple other dreams, though. Alabama's not head and shoulders above anybody this year. Usually it's Alabama. They are by far the best team in college football. This year you can't say that. Yeah, they've played very good teams and done very well. Their defense is good. Well, looking at it, the game, they're going to have to, Mississippi State this weekend, which we'll talk about Thursday a little more. But, I mean, Alabama lost to Ole Miss, and that's their only loss. Then they beat Texas A&M, who's now unranked, 59-0, which is apparently pretty impressive because Texas A&M just beat Auburn. But then they went to overtime versus LSU. And other than that, they haven't played a ranked team that they beat. They lost 11 Ole Miss. I think they'll beat Mississippi State because I don't think Mississippi State is good. Yeah, Dak Prescott is a favorite. I mean, everybody loves Dak Prescott. Not sold on the man. I would not start my football team with Dak Prescott. I've made that very clear that I would start my team with a lot of other players besides Dak Prescott. Haven't seen a whole lot from him. He's got 7 interceptions on the season. But Alabama is not head and shoulders above any team in college football. The way they've played this year, they look good. But I don't think they deserve a playoff spot unless they beat Mississippi State. If Mississippi State is undefeated at the end of the season, they will be in the playoffs. And Alabama, if everything goes according to whatever, Alabama misses. Even if Alabama beats Mississippi State, they still may miss the playoffs. If Mississippi State can go undefeated besides versus Alabama. Because Alabama's still got a tough schedule too. If Alabama wins and Mississippi State loses this game, and then they don't lose, and neither of them lose again, one of them misses. And I say that because, nice inner loop here, TCU is the real deal. TCU is the 4th team in. Right now, if you told me name my 4, it's Mississippi State, Florida State, Oregon, TCU. Alabama just won by 7 in overtime versus LSU. Number 16 LSU. TCU just beat Kansas State by 21, and Kansas State was number 7th in the nation. I mean, Kansas State was playing phenomenal football. I mean, Kansas State had not scored below 20 but once versus a loss in Auburn. Other than that, their lowest output was 23. And TCU held them without a score in a quarter. TCU is the best. TCU is the 4th one in. Bama is not. Bama has to prove themselves. Because right now, I think TCU is a better football team. The rankings, the standings don't say so. But I'm here to tell you TCU would beat Bama. TCU's 6th, Bama's 5th. Auburn dropped. No, Bama's 4th, TCU's 5th. It's hard, and I mean, USA Today has Bama 3rd over Oregon. Oregon's a better team than Bama right now. Tyler would sit here and argue with me the entire time about that, but TCU's one loss was to Baylor, which is something to mention, because Baylor has only lost one. It was to West Virginia, and Baylor is now 6th, I think. 6th. I believe they moved up to 6th. Yeah. In AP. ESPN puts TCU 4. I think that's fair. I mean, ESPN has what I'd have it. Mississippi State, Florida State, Oregon, TCU. That's the best 4 to make the playoffs. Right now. Things change. I understand. But Oregon moved up to 3rd, and I think Oregon's going to stay there looking at the rest of their schedule. I say they always lose one they shouldn't have, and that usually kills them. But this year, since there's a playoff, they can lose. They were allowed to lose one, and they lost that one. TCU, like I said, crushed K-State. Just a beatdown, 21. Ohio State and Arizona State are 2 teams that they're not going to make it in the playoffs. They're not going to. I mean, Ohio State beat Michigan State by 12, a convincing win. And Notre Dame lost to Arizona State. Notre Dame was 10th. Arizona State was 9th. By the way, Michigan State was 8th, and Ohio State was 14th. And Arizona State won by 24. I mean, just an utter beatdown. Problem is there's too many teams ahead of them. Arizona State is 7th, and Ohio State is 8th in the AP Top 25. That puts Baylor, who's probably not going to lose again, TCU, Alabama, in their way of getting to the top 4. Getting to the 4th spot. Yeah, they were quality wins, but Alabama's played tough strength of schedule. TCU has only lost to one team in a tougher conference than both Arizona State and Ohio State. I mean, you look at Arizona State, they lost to UCLA, who I don't even believe is ranked now. Maybe they're 18th. They're near the bottom of it. They beat USC, who is not ranked now. I mean, you look at the ranked teams they beat. They beat Utah in overtime, who's probably not going to be ranked after this week. And they beat Stanford, who's not ranked. Their one good win was this Notre Dame one. They're not going to be able to jump all of those teams. Now, if some of those teams lose, yeah, they're in. But they're not in. It's not going to happen. Yeah, they had convincing wins, but Ohio State, Arizona State are on the outside looking in. I think Baylor's same way. Baylor's outside looking in. I think the only ones that got a shot at it, Mississippi State, Florida State, Oregon, Alabama, TCU. I think there's 5. I think it's all between those 5 teams. Barring no huge upset losses. that's what's going to be. Because Alabama still has to play number 1, and Alabama still has to play Auburn. And Mississippi State still has to play Ole Miss. Things could change, but an SEC team will probably make it in. I would be shocked if at least 1, if not 2, didn't. But I don't think 2 should. I think TCU, if they win out, should. Oregon, Florida State, and an SEC team. And speaking of Florida State, their quarterback, don't know if you've heard of him, famous Jameis. Don't know if you've heard of him. He said that he is hurting his football team. And a lot of you would agree, but not for the same reason that he said. He said because of his interceptions. He has 11 on the season. He's actually thrown quite a few recently. Quite a few being 5, 6 in the last 3 games if you want to count that. Which is more than half his interceptions in 3 games. Yes, interceptions are bad. Yes, it's hurting his team. Yeah, I understand. But they would not be in the situation that they are without Jameis Winston. I mean, you look at what he's done for this football team, 17 touchdowns. Their defense was awful to start the season. You cannot sit here and tell me without Jameis Winston, they would win all of these games. You can't do that. You cannot sit here and tell me that. Oklahoma State was close with Jameis Winston. Citadel was a blowout. They could win that without Jameis Winston, I think. Clemson was without Jameis Winston, and it went to overtime. Clemson is, I believe they're still ranked, but they're not a threat. They're 7-2, which is pretty good. 6-1 in the ACC. But yeah, they didn't need Jameis Winston for that one. Okay. NC State wasn't that close, but without Jameis Winston, it would have been much closer. Wake Forest wasn't close. Without Jameis Winston, it would have been close. I mean, you look at these games, without Jameis Winston, they're in trouble. And I understand they're not doing anything like, oh, well, they're just going to put nobody back there. I get they're going to replace him with somebody. I understand that. And Jameis Winston only threw a touchdown versus Wake Forest, and they won 43-0. He threw a touchdown and interception. He also threw 300 yards. They only had 1 rushing touchdown. The majority of their touchdowns were on little things. I mean, Jameis Winston had a rushing touchdown that game. Then a lot of field goals. I mean, fumbles for touchdowns. Jameis Winston passed and threw for a touchdown. He accounted for 2 of those touchdowns. There's no way they would have won without him at Louisville. Yeah, Louisville was ranked 25. And yeah, he probably cost them a lot in that game. I mean, you look at the interceptions he had. You look at this and that. Yeah, I understand that. He threw quite a few interceptions that game. I mean, quite a few might be an understatement. Oh, computer froze. See ya. All right, we're back. But yes, I get the fact that he probably led to some of that late heroic comeback. He threw 3 interceptions. I get that. He also threw 3 touchdowns and over 400 yards. They also had a good rushing day. I mean, there was a fumble recovery for a touchdown. Then Jameis Winston threw 1. There was a 40-yard run. Then Jameis Winston threw 1. There was a 38-yard run. And then Jameis Winston threw 1. The running game builds off of the passing game and vice versa. They usually haven't had a running game. Therefore, Jameis Winston's had to throw the ball a lot. A lot. Like, he's had to throw the ball an absurd amount of time. I mean, for a while, they had no running attack. I mean, they're 104th in running the football. 104th. You take away last week and the week before that, because I think last week, first Virginia, they did pretty well running the football. 70 yards. 100 yards total, pretty much. You take away versus Louisville, there's not one running back that's cracked 100 yards on the season. In a game this season. I mean, he has been relied on to do a lot. And he's done it. He's done all of that. I mean, they had no running attack versus Notre Dame. Winston had to do everything. I mean, Winston literally had to do almost everything. Yeah, they had 2 rushing touchdowns, but they were short ones. The guy didn't break, he got 25 yards rushing. They had to rely on Jameis Winston to do everything. So to say that he's hurting the team, yeah, the interceptions hurt the team. I fully think that interceptions kill a football team, and I think that's why Mariota is one of the best quarterbacks in college football right now, because he's not turning the ball over and making those mistakes. But also, he is the reason the team is where they're at. Jameis Winston is a remarkable, I'm going to say once-in-a-lifetime quarterback. He's not the brightest off the field. We've seen that through his antics. Quite a few antics. But he is he's a more mobile Ben Roethlisberger. I think I've said that before in this show. He's a big dude, breaks a lot of tackles, makes some mistakes, but has the ability to have phenomenal games. And he can win football games. I mean, Ben's got 2 Super Bowl rings, just had 3 phenomenal games before throwing up a goose egg versus the Jets, which I said he would. Said the Jets were going to win that football game. Just saying. Jameis Winston is the reason that Florida State is where they're at. The turnovers are going to hurt them, but without him, they're not in the situation where the turnovers really matter because nobody's watching. Moving on to the pros, you got the AFC North. Are they for real? Absolutely. I mean, let's take a look at the AFC North, why don't we? Let's go down memory lane of the AFC North. Cleveland's leading at 6-3. Cincinnati's in second at 5-3. And then Pittsburgh and Baltimore are tied at 6-4. Pittsburgh has the advantage. I mean, it's a half game separating everybody. And they're all above 500. All of them are above 500. That's a remarkably difficult division. I mean, you even take the AFC East, 7-2, New England, Miami 5-4, Buffalo 5-4. But then you got the Jets at 2-8. And this is a problem with the NFL playoffs compared to like NBA. It's not the best teams make it in. Because you look at it, and it'd be what? I think 6 making in? So it'd be New England, all of the AFC North. So that's 5. It'd be difficult. I mean, right now it's going to be difficult. Because New England's going to win, AFC's up for grabs, AFC North's up for grabs, the AFC South, Houston, Indianapolis is going to win, Denver's going to win the AFC West. So that leaves a wild card between whoever doesn't win the AFC North, so Cleveland, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Kansas City, San Diego, Miami, Buffalo. Buffalo probably won't be in it. Miami probably won't be in it. I don't know how for real Cleveland is, but looking at their schedule and everything coming up, Cleveland will probably still be in it. They'll be in the mix. Anybody in the AFC, I think for the most part, will be in the mix. Cincinnati's fallen off some. Pittsburgh just lost to the Jets. That's a disappointing loss for them. But looking at it, it comes down to the AFC North to get the 2 wild cards. Kansas City may. We'll see how good Kansas City actually is. They're kind of a quiet good. And they're 6-3. They've only lost to Denver, San Francisco, and then a bad loss to Tennessee. But the AFC North is for real. I mean, Cincinnati's probably the only team in there where it's like, I don't know. Other than Cincinnati, those teams are the real deal. We'll see what Cleveland does if they can continue this. But it looks like they're for real. Staying on NFL. Carson Palmer out for the season of the Cardinals. The Cardinals are still they're still going to make it to the playoffs and most likely win that division. But they're in trouble. The Cardinals are a little bit in trouble because I think they were the best team in football, and now they've kind of. We'll see if they're the best team in football now. Like they're hit a little bit from this. They're gonna hurt a little bit. But we've seen the quarterback play for them. We've seen Arizona's backup play. Pull up the scores here. See how he's done previously. I mean, we look at him. Drew Stanton. 3 touchdowns in his time. 3 touchdowns. No interceptions this season. It's a pretty good stat line to have. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's played some. We've seen him play. That helps the cause. You think about it, you say, "Oh, well, he has played before." It helps the cause that the guy, we've seen what he has. This isn't his first game. We're not throwing him out there for his first game. Which helps. But a problem is that, well, he lost. He didn't do anything versus Denver. Which, it's Denver. I believe that was his first game in. I can understand why he didn't do great there. Actually, no, that was his last game in before Palmer was healthy again. He did well versus the 49ers, leading them to a victory 24-13. They lost to Denver, like I said. He couldn't do a whole lot. And then he led them to a win against the Giants, who maybe not that impressive looking at the season and everything that's unfolded so far. So we've seen the guy play, which does help looking at them saying, "Oh, well, we've seen him play." And he won versus the Rams. He finished off that game winning the game. And actually did pretty well. I mean, Stanton in the last part of the game, he threw a touchdown, and then the defense really stepped up. And that's something, the defense is there. The defense will always help them be better than they should be. The team be better than they should be. But speaking of quarterbacks, you look at the Eagles. They got the Sanchez, as he's referred to. Is he their starting quarterback from here on out? I don't know. It's kind of hard to think about after seeing him do what he did in the Jets. Although he did do well at the Jets for a little bit. The problem is, or not the problem, I guess. The thing is, anybody can play on that football team at quarterback. It's a quarterback-friendly system. So, we look at who's been playing quarterback for them. Nick Foles is not as good as he was last year. 13 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He's only got 17 interceptions in his career. He's projected for 23 touchdowns, 18 interceptions if he does continue to play. You look at Sanchez, he's got 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's right on line. Neither of them are great quarterbacks. They're okay quarterbacks leading in the league. Or they're okay quarterbacks. It's the system they're in that makes them good quarterbacks. Or make them look better than they are. Jeremy Maclin's one of the best wide receivers in the league right now. And it's because they throw the ball so much. And you look at Darren Sproles, actually is probably a better running back right now, at least fantasy-wise, than LaShawn McCoy. I mean, McCoy has double the rushing yards. Actually, almost triple the rushing yards. But less touchdowns. Running. And passing yards, receiving yards, I mean, you look at it, Sproles has 257 receiving yards. McCoy isn't used as much in the screen, only has 92. No touchdowns for McCoy on passes. It's a passing team. This team loves to throw the football. Therefore, any quarterback that in the words of Trent Dilford, any quarterback that loves to play quarterback loves this system. Because they are going to get to air it out. They are going to get to do what they want and air out the football, throw it deep, have fun with it. They're going to get to throw the football. Therefore, if you can be somewhat accurate with it, or you can throw a little screen pass, you're going to do well on the team. And that's why Mark Sanchez did okay on the team and won versus a team that hasn't been doing great this year in Carolina, whose offensive line is awful. Watching that game, their offensive line may be one of the worst in the league. It was an awful performance by the offensive line. And Cam Newton can be a very good quarterback, but the problem is he doesn't have time to be a very good quarterback. Adrian Peterson has a court date for Monday the 17th to try and be reinstated into the NFL. I see it probably happening. I don't know. They may reinstate him next year. I don't know if he'll play again this year. There's not too many games left. There's a decent amount, but I don't see him playing this year. If he does, it's not going to be for a little while. They could use him, but I think he's probably just going to be held off until next year. Fantasy-wise, I know a lot of you guys are still hanging on him, hoping he can give you something. You drafted him so high, hopefully he can give me something. Probably not this year. Next year, I think he'll be back. I think they're probably going to say, hey, we'll let you back next year in this hearing on November 17th. And if it doesn't go his way, he'll appeal and it'll just last longer and longer and longer until his next season. That's what I see happening there. But, looking at everything going on, it's about all I got on Cup Check. Be back Thursday. Lots to talk about. NBA's going on. Thursday night football. We'll cover who I think is going to win what games. Went, what was it? 11-3, 9-3, something. I only lost 3 games last week. Not too bad. I took Cincinnati. They lost. Took Carolina. Thought they'd win. And took the Saints, who lost in overtime. Those were my 3 losses. If you were writing them down, if you were taking notes. I only lost 3. I'm getting better. I got them written down on paper. At the end of the season, I'll be able to give you my my overall, my how good I did over the season. It'd be surprising. I'm over 500. I'm actually pretty far over 500 after this week. But you'll get all my picks. If there's time, we'll do the power rankings. Talk about more college football. Big games coming up this upcoming weekend. NBA, as I mentioned. We'll get into a little more detail on college basketball since it'll start the day after that show. But really, college basketball won't take off until next Tuesday. But until 4:30 on Thursday, you'll have to deal without me for a little bit. But until then, this is Cup Check. I'm Alex. You're listening to WODU, the best in college radio.